Okay, so that's good. And welcome back, everybody. So nice to see you back for day two. And today we're going to be talking about your business model. So I was saying to the early arrivers that I think today's material is the most complex of the 5 days. It's the most likely to leave you overwhelmed. So I would love your feedback. Let me know if it felt manageable or if I've given you too much to think about. But don't feel, we are not getting to perfection by Friday. What we're doing is opening a series of conversations with ourselves to help us resolve our business better throughout the course of the year. So that is the purpose of this event. So I'm going to start sharing today's presentation. And Jenny, can you see that? Because I can see you. Is it showing up? Okay, that's great. So I'm just waiting for my screen to clear. Okay. Right. So welcome back, day two. Today we're looking at your business model. Ooh. Um, so I said to you all yesterday, if you're doing this well, if you want to outperform, if you want your business to be one of the ones that sort of stands out for its management, your management of your business, you need to think of yourself as the CEO of a small business that is operating within a sector. So this week is about improving the management quality of your business so that you make better decisions based on having a clearer direction, and that is because your business is sitting on stronger foundations. So that's a lot. And we are going to be thinking about it step by step. But this is a process. So, as I was saying, don't expect to resolve all of this in a week. But I think I can promise that if you continue to work on this and refine it over a period of time, you will see progress. You will see improvement. This does work. So by Friday, what you can expect to have is a sense of direction, not perfection. It's taken, it takes months or years to get this all completely resolved and honed to perfection, but you'll have something that you can work from and something that you can revise. So business design is not abstract. It's a series of conscious choices. So we want to get ourselves into a position where we are making decisions based on a plan and a strategy and not sort of through instinct or through sort of random hope, but actually based on having thought things through and the direction that your business is taking is sort of becoming obvious and becoming apparent. So for this course, I'd love it if you would set aside some thinking time, maybe find some time for a little bit of homework, and don't expect perfection. Expect to get to some imperfect answers by the end of the week. So our 5-day course, yesterday was vision and values. Today we're business model. Tomorrow, and all of these build on each other. So we have to have done the day before in order to be able to think about the following day. So vision and values, business model, money and metrics, marketing and visibility, and then on Friday, blending the whole thing together to come up with an action plan for the year. So yesterday we did vision and values, and I asked you, what is your why? Why are you doing this? I asked you what you will do and what you're not prepared to do. So by establishing our values, we can begin to make conscious choices about the things that we choose to do and the things that we're going to set aside. And also, our values allow us to encounter like-minded people. We start to find our tribe. I think some of our designers yesterday were talking about, staying within their swim lane and doing the thing that they've decided to do, and that this was helping them connect with the right kinds of people. So our values help us to figure out who we want to serve, but also to know who isn't a good match for us. So values, the presentation was recorded. You can get the link either in the Hothouse group or you'll find it on my YouTube channel. So today we're talking about business model, and here are the 6 points I'm going to take you through. So I'm going to start with, I think, what I would call the Hothouse theme of the year. So this is my favorite new concept, and it's the concept of radical ownership. So I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm then going to point you at competitor analysis, and then I'm going to ask you about you. I'm going to ask you who you serve, what it is you do. I'm going to talk a little bit about trust-based purchasing and your current level of business achievement. And then we're going to talk about your suite of services. So we're actually going to get down to the services that you are going to be supplying in the market. Now, could I ask for if it's possible to go on to mute during the presentation, unless you want to ask a question or shout something at me. But if you could put yourself on mute, it just helps avoid background noise coming through over the audio. Okay, so I'm starting with radical ownership. Now, radical ownership is actually, it came from a book, I think, of the same name, and the concept is military. And the idea is that, you know, when things are life and death, ultimate responsibility is not grey, it's black and white. You make black and white decisions based on the gravity of the situation. And through this year, an approach I want to take to my business, and I'm encouraging others to come with me, is this concept of radical ownership. So it's looking at things directly, not flinching, not looking away, and shouldering the full responsibility of our business, not making excuses, and taking challenges on head on. Radical ownership. Now, I spoke to you yesterday about your business operating within a sector. So, in the world of business, there are lots of different sectors. So we might have finance or transportation or aviation or oil, or in our case, design. And when the world, the economic environment is good and warm and generous within your sector, most of the businesses within that sector can flourish. The well-managed ones will flourish more, but everybody is going to, probably be okay. But when the weather turns bad within your sector, that's when good management comes to the fore. So I mentioned yesterday that I changed careers, or my business changed slightly in 2008 with the financial crisis. That was a very bad time for interior design and architecture. So 2008, it was raining heavily in the world of design, but the sun was shining in education, because education lags design economically. Because when people lose their jobs, they move over into, they decide to get training. And so they shift over, and education can do quite well in those situations. So in poor conditions, management quality matters more than talent. Radical ownership says that there might be reasons within your world why things are difficult, but we mustn't turn those reasons into excuses. And I want to bring you an example of radical ownership now as part of your business model, and that is conducting competitor research. Okay, looking hard at our competition. And that can be something that feels a bit uncomfortable. It can feel intimidating, because the public face of a business doesn't necessarily tell the whole story of the business. The public face is resolutely positive. Most businesses look successful from their facade. We don't know what's going on behind, but it's very helpful for you to have an idea of who your competitors are and what their position is in the market. By doing this, you are going to find out what your clients are seeing. You're going to understand the language that your clients are already absorbing from your competition. And you'll also begin to get a sense of what is background noise. So the same thing that you read or you see everywhere that eventually loses its impact because of its ubiquity. It's just everywhere. It no longer cuts through because everybody says it and they say it in the same way. So your competitor research is going to give you a good understanding of those various items. Now, I'm going to ask you to position yourself clearly. You know, we want to take a distinct position. We want to have a unique offering, ideally, and you're going to have a much better chance of positioning yourself clearly if you can see mentally what your clients are comparing you to. So by looking at your competition, you can begin to see, you know, how everybody else looks, and you can hopefully begin to distinguish yourself. So competitive research helps give us an awareness of sameness, the same phrases, the same aesthetic cues, the same service descriptions, and the same somewhat bland vocabulary that is being used about, you know, the broad sweep of businesses that are in competition with you. Now, we do an exercise in my bootcamp course where I ask designers to look hard at top rated businesses. So we think about the star performers in our industry. We go and look at their websites and we analyze what those designers say about themselves and what they say about their services. And the contrast between a top performing designer and their use of language and the rest of the mass of designers is very marked. Okay, so top designers are using original ideas, they're using original language, they're storytelling, you know, they're using beautiful prose, they're using different ways of describing their business from the great mass. So sameness is something we can become aware of and we can hope to separate ourselves out of. The other thing is we can see how our competitors are helping to culture, to nurture credibility in their services. We can see what they claim as their experience, their authority, what gives them confidence, and we can see the level of reassurance that they're giving to their clients before they're asking their clients to commit. So once you have engaged in competitive research, you stop guessing, you stop imagining the worst, eventually you'll become really hardened to this. You know, you'll start toughening up and you'll come to understand that there is space for everybody, but we do need to be true to ourselves. We can't pretend to be somebody else. We have to have an honest offering that reflects the best that we have to offer. So you can start making decisions based on evidence because you know what the competition looks like. Now, I've put a resource for you in the Hothouse group. You'll find it under the Files tab, and it's also sitting there in the main body of the group today. And it is an AI prompt pack that will help you. Basically, what you do is you take the web address of your competitor's website, you put it into AI, and you use the questions in this pack to get AI to analyze your competition. And AI will give you a report on the competition that will allow you to critique that competition. And if you're feeling very brave, you can do the same for your own business. So you can give the AI your URL and you can get the AI to critique your business using the same prompts to get a real insight of how you compare impartially, you know, when you're considered against the others who are operating in your same area. Okay, so that's your competition. Next up, I want you to think about who you serve, because I think a lot of interior design websites, interior design businesses that I look at, they almost take a sort of template approach to the services that they're going to offer. They sort of have in mind, well, this is what an interior designer does. These are the services that they offer. And there's a sort of boilerplate approach to services that I see on some websites, when in fact, the best way to start thinking about this is to think about who you serve. So you want to think about the people who are actually going to be buying your services. You want to think about your territory, where it is you want to be operational. You think about the local budgets that exist, the local types of property that you could specialize in, the local demographics. Is it a place that has a lot of young families? Is it somewhere that people go to retire? Is it an area where lots of people are single and they're, out working most of the day? What are the local demographics? And also the local trust. Now, I don't know if this is quite the right way to express this, and this is a slightly sensitive issue, but I've got clients working in areas where people are less prepared to pay large design fees upfront. So in some parts of the world where people are accustomed to paying for professional services, there is a greater ease with buying interior design services, and in other places, it's a little bit harder to sell in. So that local trust issue is also going to come into the profile of the people that you're going to be working with, your clients. And again, once you've done your thinking about those things, so you're thinking about the local budgets, the different types of property that are typical in your territory, the local demographics of the people who live there, and the local sort of desire for interior design services and preparedness to pay for it, you can again ask AI for help with this. So you can feed in your market research, the budgets, the property, the demographics, and you can ask AI to help you to figure out what those people's pain points are going to be. So not the lovely aspirations they have about the beautiful home that they're going to create, but the actual challenges that they have in their day-to-day life in the way that they live. Because when we're thinking about curating services or creating services that directly respond to client need, then actually when we're not talking about ultra high net worth, we're talking about the sort of typical interior design client. Those people are going to be driven partly by pain point, and your services need to respond to those particular pain points and the needs that your clients have. So ultimately, when you've done your work on the people that are your prospective clients in the territory that you're going to be working in, what you will end up with is what we call a client avatar or client avatars. And that is basically profiles, different client profiles. Now, you might see 2 or 3 different client profiles that you could work with. So you might decide that you want to work with, affluent young families, but you also want to work with people who are looking to downsize as they reach retirement age. So you could have more than one client avatar, but you want to build them out fully. You want to understand as much as you can about these people. And again, this is a conversation that you can have with your preferred AI provider to help you build out and flesh out those client avatars. The whole purpose for this is to make sure that the services you design and you decide to promote are a good match to the client need in the territory where you're going to be operating as a designer. So my next question for you is, what do you do? And by which I mean, one interior design business might have quite a different approach to providing design services to another. So we're thinking about the shape and description of your business. And our first step to achieve that is to get some clarity on our business. And the second step is to think about how we could differentiate, how we could occupy a niche, make ourselves more specific, make ourselves more original, give ourselves a more unique positioning that helps cut through that background noise that you'll find if you take some time to look at other interior design practices and what they're saying. So, starting with clarity on your business, it's going to come from your market research. So, thinking about demographics, thinking about the kinds of properties that people live in within your territory, thinking about their openness to employing interior design services, we'll get some idea of the market that we're going to be working in. From that, we will have defined or distilled our client avatars. So we know that the kinds of clients that we are hoping to engage with. And we will also have some idea of their pain points, of the aspects of their current life that are not serving them, that they want, where they want to see change, where they have frustrations. When you have this business clarity, it can help you to identify what it is that you do for a living, but it also might help you to cross off some things that you are not going to do. You know, you might have some ideas about services that when you've done this kind of research, you think they actually aren't appropriate for the market that you find yourself in. So somebody working rurally, you know, they're not necessarily going to have a great experience using the same kind of service package as someone who's working in the center of a large city. So we can understand through this process and through working out our values what it is that we do, and we can also figure out what it is that we're not going to do. So we can begin to make those conscious decisions. Which brings me to differentiation. So how you find and occupy a niche, how you say something about you and your business that makes you sound more distinctive, that allows you to create a story around your business that has greater resonance with the clients that you're hoping to encounter. And again, this can come back to values. So you might have some governing values that guide you in your life and in your business that allow you to take a distinct position on something. You might also think that you want to work in a particular design style or aesthetic. You might want to specialize in a particular property type, something where you see a good business opportunity in your local area. You might want to focus on clients who are at a particular stage of life. Perhaps it's something that you have good experience of, that, you know, it's where we currently find you, or it's where you have experience with relatives or friends. It might be to do with geography. You might want to specialize in a particular area of the country. You might want to work a particular budget bracket. Now, I think I want to make clear at this point that I'm not talking about making a plan forever. I'm talking about, so here's a way of thinking. I'm sorry, I'm going to get slightly distracted here, but here's a way of thinking about it. I want you to have grand ambitions. I want you to have big dreams. I want you to have unlimited ambition for your business. But I also, you know, if we then try to map how we're going to get from 0 to 60 in a single bound, it's really hard to plot that trajectory. You know, there isn't a strategy that is necessarily going to be really feasible, realistic, that is going to do that. So we need to think in stages, but we must have those grand ambitions. So I'm not suggesting that if you start with a particular budget bracket, that's where you stick. The way I see this is Imagine you were taking off in a boat and your ultimate destination was Singapore, but you had no idea how you were going to get to Singapore. But you do know that the first stop that you want to make is Gibraltar. So, what we're doing is we're making a plan to get to Gibraltar with the intention of ultimately ending up in Singapore. But for now, we're focusing on the first leg. So, when I talk about budget bracket, I think it's important that all of us have the ambition of moving our business up the value chain, partly because I think AI is going to occupy the lower levels. But it's not shameful to start with a smaller ambition, that it's easier to chart the direction, and then to have further years layered on top of your plan where you see similar step changes as you move that business upwards. So, budget bracket, all of this is in the first stage of your business plan. It's not necessarily your ultimate destination. Okay, specialist knowledge. Perhaps there is something that you have an unusual experience of or an awareness of that you can bring to your business that just gives you an edge over the other people that you see operating in your territory. Maybe you have personal experience of something. Something else that I have also sort of spoken to people about recently is, and there are successful design practices doing this, where they've almost created like a trademark process. So they sell to their clients on the basis that they have this way of operating that is distinct, that has a particular appeal, that is better than other ways of delivering the design process because of a particular angle. So you can have a process-led differentiation where you do things a little bit differently, and that comes to the fore in terms of your marketing. So we're thinking about, first of all, we have to align our offering to the market with what that market wants. There's absolutely no point going in trying to sell something that would float in a major city, but just doesn't stand up somewhere more rural, somewhere that has got a very different sort of culture to it. So we want to make sure that the services and the business that we're describing is a good fit for our local territory. But I do encourage you to look at the competition, see what they're saying, because I think you'll find a lot of it very bland. And that will allow you to think about differentiation, about how you stand out or how you can stand out. And you can use the resources that I put into Hothouse to do this AI critique of your competitor's business and of your own business, just to see, what the impact is of your current promotional positioning. Okay, so then I want to get on to my fifth of 6 points for today. And point 5, I want to talk to you about trust, because interior design is a high trust, high emotion purchase. You might get people, lurking around you. Sorry, just got a bit of feedback. You might get people lurking around your business, but not stepping forward. And it could be that they just haven't quite yet had enough of you to fully trust you. And they aren't going to take that step forward until they do. And it's why that early first year of practice can feel so desolate. It can feel like nothing is happening, when in fact what's happening is you're nurturing trust with your audience. So trust-based purchasing and where your business sits on the scale of trust is also an important consideration in terms of the services that you're going to offer to the market. Now, I spoke to you yesterday about what I call my tiers of design practice, where we had tier 1, which is starting from scratch, building everything from first principles. Every time you do something, it's the first time you've done it. Not having a portfolio, not having any social proof, you don't have any testimonials. You are literally sort of scrabbling from the bottom up. That's tier one. Tier two can look a little bit more established, but it isn't fully there yet. So, you've been through the process a couple of times with a couple of clients. You might have your first photographs, but behind the scenes, you know that you've still got work to do. Tier three is maturity, where out front and at the back, everything is humming along nicely. Because you've been doing it for a while, you've ironed out the wrinkles, you feel more confident, you've got a good going business. That is tier three. Tier four is when we step up to be the absolute optimum, where we are the best designer that we can possibly be. We have presence, we have authority, we have a reputation, and the world is starting to become aware of us. And at that point, the sky is the limit. So we have our four tiers. And in terms of what you offer to the world, in terms of services, I said yesterday that some questions have different answers depending on which stage your business is at. And this is a good example. So when it comes to trust, tier one and to some extent tier two, there hasn't been time yet for people to trust you. You haven't been doing it long enough. There isn't enough evidence. You haven't made enough of a connection with these people. It's a work in progress. And that means that you're sort of having to borrow trust. If people are going to take the plunge with you, they're taking a risk. So we have to sort of understand that in terms of the ramp that we give them onto our business. We can't expect them to step up. We can't expect them to take a leap. Whereas for our tier three and tier four designers, they have reputation, they have social proof, they have photographs, they have testimonials. They can ask more of their clients. They can be more discerning in terms of who they work with. So this makes a difference when we are thinking about what our services, what our service offerings are going to be. So if you are a business that is tier one or tier two, you need a gentle ramp. And by gentle ramp, I mean a low risk offer that allows the client to try before they make any sort of major financial investment in your business. And that probably comes down to consultancy services. So what I see a lot is young design practices quite heavily reliant on the hour by hour payment that comes from consultancy and trying to drum up that business while also trying to build, strength for selling larger packages. But initially, you might need to offer those consultancies to get people to cross the threshold. You might need to incentivize them to get going. You might need to take work that is not quite so well paid. You find yourself in more compromising situations. Now, I've got all kinds of advice about that, but that's for another time. But tier three and tier four, you can afford to bundle packages that are higher level, that require greater investment, that expect more of your clients, because you have the maturity and the evidence and the authority to expect that level of interest from the market. So this has a big impact on how you scope your services, for the next 6 months or for the next year. Now, tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, when we start thinking about the money behind all of this, we're going to look at revenue streams. And we're going to think about how revenue streams develop over time. So today we are, with our first stage business, all we're doing today is sailing from here to Gibraltar. We know we want to get to Singapore, but we really just need to, we know that Gibraltar's on the way. I hope it is. I don't actually know, but Gibraltar's on the way. And so we're just going to worry about how we're going to get there. That might mean some early stage services that as your business grows, as your reputation improves, increases, as the evidence of your services becomes more compelling, you can start to jettison some of those early approaches, and you can ask more, you can change your approach. And we'll see that tomorrow when we start looking at the transitioning across revenue streams. So we start out reliant on the low rent stuff at the beginning. We have an aspiration to sell units at a higher level. And as time progresses, we see greater emphasis on the more aspirational products that we have, and we move away from the emphasis on the lower end stuff. So we'll see that coming in through revenue streams tomorrow when we start looking at the money side of things. So finally for today, number 6, your suite of services. So what you promote, what you say on your website is what you do, is what's for sale. What you tell people about on Instagram or LinkedIn or at networking or wherever it is you do your marketing, and we're going to talk about marketing as well, it's going to be a response to who your clients actually are. So realistic recognition of the market that you're in. And if that doesn't work, we're going to have to come up with another plan. We also need to think about what our clients are ready to buy. So I've spoken about geographical regions where people are more open to design fees and areas where people are more resistant. So I find with clients who are in areas that are more resistant, often the designers working there are more successful if they sell bundles of hours rather than trying to sell full design service. In the end, they get to the same package. It's just that the client buys it a piece at a time. And that helps the client to commit when they have, anxiety about making what seems to them to be a really large upfront investment. So are your clients ready to buy? And therefore, how would you bundle your services to make them, to make your clients have an appetite for them? And then finally, where you are in your business. So whether you're a new business or whether you're an established business, you're going to either make that easy ramp into your business where clients can come in and try, or you're going to be past that. You're going to have much bigger, grander ambitions for your business, and you're going to be thinking about larger scale services. So we have 3 filters, I think. We have a client filter. We're thinking about the services that we're proposing to offer. Would your client, the client that exists in your territory, would they recognize this service as useful? Would they feel that it was relevant to their situation? Would it solve a problem that they actually have? Does it hit their pain point? Then we have a second filter, whether or not they have trust, whether or not they are ready to buy. Does this feel like a safe first step, or is it a leap of faith? Does it assume confidence and familiarity with you that you haven't yet developed? Does it feel like it's asking too much of the client too soon? And then we have your business experience, which comes down to, can you actually deliver this service? Is it within your competence, your levels of competence? Are you ready to offer this service? Does it suit your capacity and systems? And is it getting us towards Gibraltar with Singapore in sight, or is it heading us in a different direction? We want to make sure that we have that grand ambition and that everything that we're creating en route is heading in that general direction. So those are our filters that we want to, or our lenses that we want to look at our possible services through in order to have the best reaction in the market to the thing that you propose to offer. So this is part of business planning, really. A business plan would cover who you serve, who your clients are, what it is that your business does, and the suite of services that you offer. Now, I'm talking quite generally to a mixed experience audience. I know some people here are very experienced, have very successful, mature businesses. There are other people in the audience who are just starting out, who's perhaps they're starting their business this year. So we have a sort of mixed level. And of course, there is a difference depending on, whether we want to attract ultra high net worth clients or high net worth clients, or where we are in that particular journey. But basic 101 business planning, who you serve, what you do, and what your services are going to be. That's today's agenda. So we aren't building the business. We're not getting to Singapore. We're not building the business that you dream about, but we're building a business that can grow and that will ultimately get there. That is the plan. That's what we're doing here. So tomorrow we are going to be talking about modeling this financially, thinking about how we then take the services that we think are appropriate for us at this stage in our business, and maybe we start thinking about some of the services we'd like to offer in the future. So the market isn't quite ready to receive full design service from us just yet, but we hope that by the end of the year, we'll be getting to that point. So we can start to, make a note that we hope to be selling at that level by December, but that for the first half of the year, we're going to be focusing on the lower risk investments for the client. And tomorrow, we're going to be looking at how we can model that to give ourselves targets so that we can be intentional every month about pursuing this plan. So we're making a plan that is broken down. It's for a year, it's broken down by quarters, and then each quarter is broken down into 3 months. And we're going to be pursuing that plan to get us to the goal for the end of the year. We're building a business that can grow. So that's it for today. I'm going to stop sharing. I would be so interested in knowing if that made any sense. I think it's an overwhelming amount of work. I think, this is what we do on boot camp. And in boot camp, we do it over 5 weeks. And each week, every student has a 1-hour one-on-one with me. And we talk through these various points of business practice bespoke with the designer. And that is the level of thought that really needs to go into this process. So I'm not for a minute suggesting that you're going to be able to complete this week, but I hope that it gives you a framework to think about and build on for the first quarter of the year, that you can start to assemble a plan aligned with. So, I mean, please, does anybody have any questions or any comments? The floor is open. I'd love to hear.
Hi, Julia. It's Nikki here. First of all, I'm sorry. I think I came off mute halfway through, so really apologies for that. But just want to say it's really helpful, and just that kind of long-term thinking about where I want to get to, and then the first stop, Gibraltar, and what that looks like. And it kind of, I don't know, it makes everything feel a bit more exciting and achievable. So yeah, I found it all really helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, because sometimes I feel like I get these designers and they're full of ambition and they tell me what their big goal is. And I say, well, hold on, slow down, let's look at this bit first. And I almost feel like I'm putting a wet blanket over them, but I'm not. I'm trying to break it into stages, and we're only thinking, once you're really comfortable that the plan goes the whole route, we don't need to worry about the back 4/5. We've already got that sketched out. What we need to do, our bit that we need to do, is the first fifth. We need to focus on the first fifth, keep our eye on the goal, but focus on the first fifth. And then it doesn't feel so overwhelming. And then it can be broken down into, distinct steps that can actually be real for you. You can know where to start. So that is the plan. Does anybody have any questions or any comments that you'd like to make?
Julia, I I'd like to say I think this is so pertinent, and I feel like you've just kind of given me permission to reframe something that I've kind of been coming across in the last couple of years, which is that whole sort of full service. That's what we all want to deliver because it gets us to the results that we want. And I think, whatever design training we've been in, that's kind of what we're all, you know, um, pushed towards, if you like. But particularly in this climate, I think that clients are really feeling their way into services. And I've found myself, so often, once you let them know, well, the process breaks down into these stages, then they just want to commit to concept, and it always has felt like a slight failure. I mean, I'm talking in very stark terms, but I think that this way of thinking about it is kind of, it just, as I said, it feels like, oh, all right, so there's another way of thinking about this, that maybe we're saying this is what we can do and frame it as a positive, in a positive way, rather than a negative one. So it's, my mind is kind of exploding now and thinking about how can I completely rethink what I'm offering as services, and make it more real and client focused. So thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I would say there are 1,000 different ways of being an interior designer, and I don't think that any one of them is superior, but I want them all to be profitable. So I think the point is to enjoy your work, number one, but to find a way of making a good business in the market that you're in, and that isn't necessarily that, standard fairy tale, what is an interior designer and what exactly do they do? And I really think that, and I know there are some people here who have done competitor analysis, um, and it can be a bit scary, but oh my goodness, it can also be incredibly encouraging. Because there are so many people out there, sort of cookie cutter design practices. And when you've seen five of them, you get a real sense of what the interior design client is confronted with, which is
Mm.
a lot of stuff that looks exactly the same. And nothing, so you want to create something that cuts through and that actually responds to what the clients that you're going to be working with really need. So yeah, so there's no one way of doing it right. There's lots of different options.
I wanted
Oh,
to say as well, Julia, that giving the nearly the permission to do a little bit of AI search into what our clients, well, their pain points, not just the competitor, but the client's pain points. And I know before AI, you kind of think, oh yeah, I know this, this client that will be his pain points because he had a couple of projects these were their pain points, which you resolved. But actually, trying to think a bit more deeper because the speed that the market is changing as well. At the moment it's difficult for a lot of people. They're maybe not investing it exactly the same. So maybe be a little bit courageous to offer different things or phrase it in a different way.
Yeah,
And all this trust buying of your client, which I know I'm very bad on Instagram. I felt a bit overwhelmed last year, so I kind of nearly stopped it. And now I'm kind of thinking, okay, no, I need to build the trust back. I need to, and this is a way, but yeah. So thank
yeah.
you.
No, it's a pleasure. And I think pain points. So pain points, it's funny. Last year I did a couple of presentations on selling to ultra high net worth clients, and that's like a completely different business. Okay. So a lot of the stuff I've spoken about today becomes it's like the difference between, I don't know, ice and water and steam or something. They are all the same thing. They're all interior design, but in their different areas, they are completely different. And so pain points, you don't want to hit an ultra high net worth client with their pain points because they don't really have pain points. They have aspirations. So we're going to, so depending on where you want to pitch yourself in the market, you are going to take a different approach to what it is that the client wants. But certainly up to, a good affluent level, people are making compromises in their homes. They, to some extent, they can't have everything that they want. There is a compromise, and your role is to help them feel like they are not living a compromised life. And you do that by discovering their pain points and resolving them for the client. So I feel like today I am talking about, if you drew a line halfway across interior design practice and you had ultra high net worth above the line and everything else below the line, we're sort of talking about stuff below the line. But nonetheless, well, it's many of the same principles as well come into play.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stephanie, hello.
Hi, Julia. I wanted to ask you about competitor research. So one of the goals that I gave myself for this month is to revisit my business plan and put some meat on the competitive research or market research side. And I quickly ran into a bit of an issue, and I wanted your thoughts on that. What I had hoped would be within my geographical sector, who is operating and what are they doing? And how are they doing? How is their business doing in that context? And it quickly morphed into, I think, something more fun, which was more about who inspires me, which studios do I admire, which studios would I, like to be like at some stage. So one sort of market research was, reality, and the other was aspirational. When you are looking at a longer term plan for yourself or as a studio, which one should you focus on?
Okay.
And is there a place for both?
Yes. Yes, so we're heading to Singapore. So that's the aspirational thing. And so we want to be inspired by that. When you look at if you look at the website take the top 5 designers you can think of that you admire, look at their websites, and you will discover the way they promote and present themselves is a completely different level to the herd. Now, I've done some work with designers who are stepping up from tier 3 to tier 4. So they're moving from having fantastic practices to actually hoping to become more renowned, even better known, more renowned. And we look at the language on their website and we look at the language on a star website, and it can be quite limited. It can be quite short on information. It can be quite exclusive. It doesn't encourage you necessarily to step forward. It gives nothing away about price. It makes no encouraging noises about affordability. All of that disappears at tier 4. And it's the brave step that designers stepping up to tier 4 need to take is to stop being accessible. Because an ultra high net worth client doesn't want to work with someone that anyone can work with. They want to work with somebody exclusive. So you have to embrace exclusivity. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. You should be looking at those brands. You should be aspiring to be those brands, but you shouldn't be adopting completely their messaging, or not their messaging, but being inspired by their messaging, because until you get established, being that exclusive would alienate the clients that you want to introduce into your business in the early stages. So so if you are, Stephanie, I know you're just starting, so, forgive me for sort of being indiscreet, but for you, I might say, be inspired by tier 4, but also take a look at really good tier 3 and see the difference and aim to have the quality of expression that you get at tier 4, but with the accessibility at inspired by tier 3, because you don't want to put people off. You want to appear to be approachable. You want to offer a warm welcome. You want to encourage people in. But I know you, you want to have the best possible quality that you can possibly have. So be inspired by those tier 4 designers. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I was talking to my husband about it, and he was talking to me about success bias. So when we're doing competitive research, if you look at tier 4, it tells you nothing of the stages, of their own stages. And so we tend to just take it at face value, but it's not, it's such a limited part of the story. So I think this is very helpful because it kind of allows for, I think, something that is more business oriented. Again, to reiterate your point on business growth, which is what you're looking for, as opposed to an analysis of, kind of a theoretical analysis of brand positioning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I will kind of tweak my approach to it because even though I felt like I was learning a lot about different studios and what I aspire to, it wasn't helpful really in, okay, well, what should I do now? So I think this is a more grounded approach.
Yeah. And again, it's staged. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's about having the big ambition and the huge goal, but recognizing you can't do it in a single step. So thinking, if I was going to do this in 3 steps, what would the end of step 1 look like? What would the end of step 2 look like? And what would the end of step 3 look like? But make sure that your messaging is appropriate for the level of trust that exists within the people who are currently following you. And as that level of trust increases, you can afford to change the tone of the message. So it's an active thing that you're doing every 6 months or something as you're looking at your website copy. Yeah, I think I've got time for one more question, maybe, or 1 or 2 more questions. So any other comments? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. I texted the question in the chat because I'm in a
Sorry.
very noisy environment. Sorry about that. So I'm kind of very close to the question that Stephanie asked, but probably on a tier 1, 2, something in between stage. So again, sorry for the noise. But so the question is really about how do you really build your competitors pool that you want to look into when you are in such an early stage of your business, considering that you still do not want to do exactly what the tier 1 are doing, but you're kind of positioning yourself on a more not necessarily high end, but high up, quite affluent kind of like clientele.
Yeah.
Sorry, hopefully it was clear.
That's okay. So imagine you are your client. So this is the way to approach it. Pretend you are the kind of client that you want to come to you, and think about what would that client type into Google? Where would they go and look? Would they go and look on the BIID website? Would they type a search into Google? Would they ask in a local network? Would they go down to the post office and look for postcards in the window at the post office? How would the client do their research? And you do the same research as if you were looking for yourself. So pretend you are your own client, do your research as if you were looking for a designer and see who comes up. That's for doing your competitor research. And speaking with Stephanie, we were talking about, aspirational research of, your future ambition and the kinds of practices that you might like to emulate or aspire to match. And again, that's a different kind of thing. So then we're looking for the highest profile designers or the designers whose work that we most admire, that we're aware of. So it's two different levels. And I think both are worth doing. It's worth seeing who's operating in your area and who, when your client comes to you, when a client finally finds you, they'll say, oh, I've got an appointment with you, and I've also got an appointment with X and Y. You want to know who X and Y are that you're going to be up against so that you can examine their businesses and see what it is they're saying about themselves so that you can do better, so that you can understand them and do better. Okay, we're a minute
Thanks.
over. That's a great pleasure. So that is it for today. Today was business model. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at modeling those services. So we're going to take some sort of mock-up services and we're going to look at how we can plan, make our projections for the year and weave our business in and out of different services with the intention of getting to step one and then getting further on towards our bigger goals in the future. So that's it for that's going to be it tomorrow. So lovely to see you all. I'm going to cook this on YouTube and I'm going to put the link to watch it again into the Hothouse group. And I hope I'll see some or all of you again tomorrow. So thank you very much for coming today.